What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on my 95 Jeep Cherokee. We're going to get it back on the road. It's been parked for 6 months. We're going to get it ready for winter. We're doing brakes, oil change, a starter, and we're going to get it cleaned up. So we're going to start with the oil change today. We're going to do 2 oil changes on it. Reason being is the first one I'm going to use as sort of a flush to get any buildup, well, some buildup out of the engine. Then we're going to go ahead with the fresh oil. First we're going to start, I got some cheap Quaker State here, 10W30. I got a quart of Marvel Mystery Oil and just a cheap oil filter. We're going to change it using this stuff first. We're going to run the car, drive it around, put some miles on it, get it hot, let the oil and the mystery oil get through there and try to clean it out. We'll come back, we'll change it out with our 6 quarts of high mileage and a Bosch oil filter. So let's do an oil change. Alright, so step 1 of oil change is to drain the old oil from the engine. So what you do is get under the car and locate the bottom of the engine. The oil pan is going to have a bolt plug on the bottom near the back, typically on most cars. Some cars have an additional one on front, but this Jeep has one just in the back here. What you want to do is remove that drain plug. Now be careful, you're going to get oil on your hand here. Take it out by hand. When you get near the end, make sure you slow down. And what I like to do is pull it out and try to go down with it right away to get your hand out of the oil. There it goes. Now that oil is dark, old, and well, pretty overdue. Now, once you no longer have a good constant stream of oil, or a very, very little stream with a drip here, that means you've got all that oil out of there. Go ahead, take your drain plug, inspect the gasket on the drain plug. In this case, the gasket looks good. Typically, you'd replace it every oil change though, but I'm going to let it go today. Go ahead and reinstall that drain plug. Make sure you start it by hand. You should be able to run this drain plug all the way down by hand without needing any sort of tool. If something's in there or in your way and you cannot start it by hand, don't try to force it, because you could strip the threads in the oil pan and create yourself a whole bunch of more problems. So I'm going to take it, get it tightened up, and you just snug it up. That's all you need. We'll take a rag and wipe down the drips, and then we will relocate our oil pan under the oil filter and remove that. Once you get the oil drained out and plug the pan back up, it's time to take the oil filter out. On this vehicle, the oil filter's down here. It's easier to access from the top. What you do is go ahead and get your hand on it. Make sure you got a good grip and try to turn it counterclockwise. Get it off of there. Sometimes you get lucky and you don't need any tools. You can do it with your hand, but sometimes they're stuck on there. So we'll have to use the oil filter wrench on this one. This here's the oil filter wrench. This is oversized from the filter. The idea is you put it around your filter and you flip your handle and it tightens up according to the size of the filter. This has quite a bit of range on it. So we'll take it. Watch out, we got a couple little wiring harnesses here. Kind of finagle it on there. And that way you get the right leverage you need. Take and loosen it off. You're going to get some oil drain out of there when you loosen it, so be prepared. I got my pan down there. Oil is going right in the pan. I'll take it loose and I'll let it sit for a few seconds just to drain. Now that it's drained, I'm going to go ahead and spin that off all the way. Hang on to it and try to get it up through here. Alright, there's still going to be some residual oil in here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this into the drain pan. I'm going to put it face down and let it finish draining. So now a very important part is take your new filter that you're going to put on, and you want to pre-fill it typically a filter holds about a quart of oil. I won't put all of that since I got to turn mine sideways to get it on. It's just going to spill out. So I'll probably do about a half to 3/4 quart. You see how it's soaking in? It's soaking into that filter material there. We've got oil on top. I can see oil in the center. Now we're going to get a thin layer of that oil on the face of that gasket. Make sure that the old gasket came off with the old filter. If it's still on the car and you go to put this one on, you could create a leak. There's a high pressure area, you'll risk running the oil out. I'm going to take my rag and wipe down the face of the oil filter housing. Make sure there's no crap built up on there. Bring the filter down, same way the last one came out. Try to keep it upright so I don't spill all the new oil out. And thread it on quickly. Alrighty. Now do not use the oil filter wrench to put the new oil filter on. What you do is run it down as far as you can by hand, and then grab onto the back of it and make sure you tighten it up. It's about as tight as I can get. I'm going to start with my 1 quart of Marvel Mystery Oil. I'm going to put that in there first. Try not to make too big a mess here. And I'll let that drain into there. Now what I gotta do is, I don't have my funnel with me, so I'm gonna have to take and cut the bottom of this bottle off, and we'll use that bottle as a funnel for the oil. Just like that, you got yourself a funnel. We'll fill up with the 5 quarts of Quaker Steak first. This is just a 10W30 conventional oil. Take your funnel, put your cap on, you're done with an oil change. The oil change is done, our first oil change of the day is done. Now we're going to move on to getting a new starter put in. Step 1 of the starter removal is to make sure you disconnect the power from your battery. My Jeep here has this quick disconnect here. If most vehicles don't have it, if yours doesn't, what you would do is just loosen up the nut on each of the clamps around the battery terminal and lift that off of there. That would disconnect the power. Back on the bottom of the car here now, you want to locate your starter. In this case, I'm on the passenger side, right below the oil filter that we just installed. This particular vehicle has 2 bolts holding the starter to the engine. There's one here that goes into the bell housing, and there's one that comes through the bell housing on the top and screws into the starter itself. We also need to disconnect the electronics from the starter here. We got 2 nuts on there holding on our electronics. I already started them by hand. But let's go ahead and take the 2 main nuts off of the electrical connection there. Alright, once you get your electrical connections off of there, you can now take the two main bolts that hold the starter to the engine. Make sure you compare your old part to your new part. You see here, this is our crusty old starter, and it may be an original or at least a factory replacement. Got the Chrysler Corporation on here. Everything to me looks pretty good. The solenoid's in the same place. Got the same amount of connections here on the back for our electronics to hook to. Two mounting holes. Same amount of teeth on the gear inside. Now to reinstall the starter, we're going to go under the car. We'll get it set up in there. The first thing we're going to do is our two main bolts to hold the starter in place for us. Then we'll hook our electronics up. We'll connect our battery and we'll start the Jeep up. First time in 6 months. Make sure everything's tight down there on the starter, the two bolts that go to the engine and the two bolts that hold the electrical connections on. Once that's all secure, go ahead and reconnect your battery. If you took the cables off, just go ahead and put them back on and tighten the nut on the terminal. So this one's on, we're going to go ahead and start it up. First start up in 6 months, cranked over right away. Couldn't be happier with that. Now we're gonna let it run, get nice and warm, let it heat up, let all the fluids go through. We'll go back, double check our oil level, and then we'll take it for a test drive after we put some brakes on it. Alright, last step of the day is to change these front brake pads and rotors. So once you get the car jacked up, make sure you put it on a jack stand. Get your wheel out of the way. Now my car, I have wheels from a 2018 Jeep Wrangler. In order to fit that bolt pattern, I have to run these adapters. So in my case, I have to remove these 5 more lug nuts down there to get that adapter off of the hub. Then we can start taking these brakes apart. Once you get your wheel off, go ahead and take a look at what you got going on. You see how much rust is built up on the surface of my rotors here, and they have really deep ridges in them. That's the reason they're getting replaced today. Locate your brake caliper. This is your caliper here. On the back of the caliper, there's going to be a upper and a lower caliper bolt right here. They're going to be slide pins. That's what allow the caliper to move back and forth when you press on the brake pedal. That's what sends the piston forward, putting pressure on your brake pedal. So what you're going to do is remove both of those upper and lower pins. See, it's going to be very long here. Go ahead and set it down there. Be careful you don't lose it. These are not typically very tight. Some people really over tighten them, and it's not necessary. There's number 2. Keep it off to the side as well. Get yourself some sort of pry bar, even a screwdriver will work. And go ahead and pry that caliper off of the rotor there. It's going to take the brake pads with it and everything. Hang it up somewhere out of the way where it won't fall. Put too much stress on that brake hose. Make sure it's secure. This time I got lucky. The rotor came right off. Alright, reason being is I just replaced this hub maybe 5,000 miles ago. So you can see I don't have a lot of rust built up on my hub. A lot of times that rotor is really rusted onto this hub tight. And what you got to do is take a hammer and work yourself around the rotor. Nice hard blows. Try not to hang in one spot for too long. That's only considering that you are changing the rotor. If you're not changing the rotor, say you're just changing the hub but you're not doing brakes, you'll want to avoid hitting that with anything that's going to put dimples or scratches in the faces of the rotor. Next step is to go ahead and get yourself wire brush here and just clean up all the surfaces that rotor is going to contact. Like I said, I just replaced this hub, so it's really not that bad, but just for reference sake, go around, clean everything up. There's a steel wire brush. Then we'll come back with some brake clean and soak it down and hit it with a rag. Now once you get everything all cleaned up, all the old parts off, go ahead and compare them to a side-by-side with the new parts. In this case I did with the rotors. The rotors look good, same size, same height. Go ahead and get your new rotor, get it cleaned off, take some brake clean, spray off the surfaces. A lot of new rotors come with a thin layer of oil on them to keep them from rusting in the box. However, these ones are the geo-coated power stop rotors and they don't have any oil on them. I did go ahead and clean them off though. We'll slide it onto the hub, and to keep it in place while we finish the brake job, we'll just run a lug nut down. That one doesn't want to go. We'll take one of the nuts that came off of the adapter. hold the rotor tight against the hub, keep it from flopping around while we finish this brake job. But now we can grab our caliper that we had previously put out of the way. We're going to pop the old brake pads out. These ones, the inner brake pad is held into the caliper with these clips on the back. What we're going to do is squeeze down towards the outer brake pad. Pay attention to the way it comes out. You want to make sure that it goes back in the same way. This clip is towards the top of the caliper. Right now this is the bottom. This clip is towards the top. And with this outer one, you may need to use a screwdriver or a pry bar sometimes. Pry up on these guys and just try to wiggle them out. In this case, I got new pads, so I can just bend these out of my way and get that brake pad off of there. Alright, there's the old pads, pretty wore out. See, this one's really uneven, real crooked. This one's pretty low and also has quite a bit of angle to it. Compare it side by side with the new pad. You see how much meat we got on there. Alright. Now, in order to get the new pads in, we have to push the piston back into the brake caliper here. Now, I have this fancy tool here that, as you ratchet it, will expand, pushing that caliper back in. However, if you don't have that tool, it's as easy as taking one of those brake pads, say the inner pad here, go ahead, reinstall it, get yourself a C-clamp, come from the front of the pad to the back of the caliper and slowly tighten that C-clamp, and that'll push it back. But in this case, I have this tool here. I'm gonna set it in my caliper and slowly start to push that in. All right. It's not a race, take your time, go slow. Also come up topside and you will keep an eye on your brake reservoir here. I've gone and taken the cap off. When your piston is forward in the caliper, that means there's more fluid inside the caliper behind the piston, keeping it forward. That's why you'll see it's a little low as we go through this brake job and finish it up. By me pushing the piston back into the caliper, it's going to put that brake fluid back into the system, and you'll see that our level will come up. So again, nice and slow, it's not a race. That's it. It's all the way back now. I'm going to clean out all the spider webs and all the other junk that's in there. Take my rag and just wipe down the surfaces where the brake pads sit. Wipe off the face of that piston, make sure there's no debris. Get your brake grease here. You're going to grease up all the surfaces that the brake pads make contact with. So I'm going to take some grease up the bottom of this caliper, I guess, bracket here. Do the same thing with the top, where the top of the pads are going to sit. Get a nice thick layer on there. And then I'll also like to take and just grease up just a little bit of where that pad's going to sit against the face of that, hopefully to help prevent any sort of corrosion, so next time I take the pads off it won't really be stuck to that face. Same thing over here, just a little bit, not too much. Get yourself your new brake pad. And again, remember, this clip was towards the top of the caliper when we took the old pad out. This is the bottom of the caliper. You can also tell by the shape of your brake pad, you have a radius inside of the caliper here. Radius goes into radius. Line it up. It takes a little bit of pressure, but go ahead and press it home. Now we take our outer brake pad here. Again, the wings. Follow your radius, radius to radius. Go ahead, set it over, and push her down. That's it. You've got your new brake pads in there. Make sure you got the correct brake pad in there. I realized I put the right side brake pad over here. They have lefts and rights. The thing that makes them different is the side that either your slot or your post is on, depending on left or right of the car, according to where that radius is on the pad. So this here is my right side inner, and I had it in there like that, and you can see that that does not match up there. Reason being is they have a left and a right on this car specifically. So go ahead and slide the bottom on. Make sure you move your slide pin out of the way in the back. Slide it forward, and when you do the same with the front when you get there, make sure everything's secure. Grab your caliper bolts back through the slides. Go ahead, thread it in there by hand. Do the same thing on the bottom. Go ahead, tighten them up. And that's it. You put new brake pads and rotors on one side. To finish off this brake job, what we're gonna do is take that nut bag off there that we ran down. We're gonna install our wheel adapter back on, reinstall our wheel, and we'll move on to the other side. We got one side left to do, then we're going to go for our test drive. That's going to wrap up the work today on the Jeep. So we did an oil change, put a new starter in it, showed you how to replace the front pads and rotors. We're going to go around, put some air in the tires, take it for a drive.